So I want to get back to our final panel. Your first panel coming up. Our final panel this afternoon is ThinkFOOD again. Thinking about farming work. We have some great farmers here to talk to you about what they do. And the topic of this session is, do you see farmers making it work? These are farmers who are making it work, and they're going to tell us how they do that and why they started farming. And so just ask each of them to give us an overview of what they do. If you don't know their farm, they can tell you a little bit about it. And then I really want to know if you want to give us some keys to your success or what makes you happy at your farm or what your farm does that you're really proud of. So we can hear from all of them, but I'm going to introduce them to you first, and then you can choose what order you want to talk. So I can mute this as well. So let's see, we have Sarah Chase from Chase Home Dairy Farm, that's in Europe. We have Elizabeth Keene from Indian Line down the road in Massachusetts. Jen Salonetti from Woven Roots in Sheringham, Massachusetts. Ashley Sunder from Millbed Street Farm in Massachusetts, also not too far away. And Dave Wilbur from Green Acres and April Hill, which is also just down the road. So they will tell you a little bit more about who they are and what they do, and I'm going to let them take it away. So anybody wants to go first? Yeah. Sarah,
yeah, very take home the fire. But so I have a little further away. You don't the dairy farm, I'm a third generation farmer, so it's like the start of the answer I got into it. There. And I was raised you know, to like do a lot of work on the road, like going to the barn in the morning and helping out. I was a military. It was my first, you know, paid job. It was actually about £1,000. It was pretty cool because I've been doing it for free before that. And yeah, I loved it from a young age. Yeah, but didn't imagine there was much of a future in it. My father kind of got by not really investing a ton in the farm, like not, you know, not modernizing, basically. Dairy farming was tough business. And yeah, so coming back after college, when I moved home, I sort of realized while I was at school, because of living in co-ops and making choices about the kind of food we were going to eat as a collective, that, you know, there was like different ways to think about food, and you know, like organic, local, these were all choices consumers could make about their food. And I also had a bunch of friends who were here who were already choosing to study CSA, organic study CSA, and I was really just I guess impressed, and it occurred to me at the same time, like, oh, maybe there's something like this that could happen in class as well. Yeah, so I decided to give it a try, which is pretty naive, honestly. But my whole plan was to do farm differently, and therefore hopefully save, you know, like not be investing in grain. I'm 100% grass-fed dairy. The idea was that I'd sort of be improving the space over time, and like how to get more out of every acre through the years. And I think in some ways that has been true, but it's also, there's been tons of hurdles. It was not a story that went just like that. I've been doing it 10 years now. I've diversified quite a bit. I've added a lot of herbs. I think one of the big reasons I'm in business is because of value added products that we do as well. My brother additionally makes cheese on our farm, so I'm not selling to a commodity market, which is essential. But I get beef and pork. At the farm store, we do a CSA, and we have also events on the farm. That's one of the things those know me the best for is our programming that we do there and show. Yeah, that's like one of the things I'm proud of too, right? Community aspect.
Yeah, I think that's the theme we're going to keep hearing, community aspect. Right, so maybe can I jump to you since you're
So I'm Meg, I'm the farm manager at Green Acres, and we haven't heard of Green Acres. It's a nonprofit organization that's in Mom. They're an organization, organization, and we have multiple areas that we work in, trails and conservation, the building and carpentry crew, and then I'm specialized on the farm. And we teach and hire youth every summer to work on the farm, grow food, harvest the food that they grow, and then also pack it out and distribute it to our staff, but also the community, like and then maximizing in Pittsfield. How I got into farming, I haven't been in it for very long, but I needed a summer job one year when I was in high school, and there's an email list through Marlboro called Maggie's List. I needed a farmhand, and my mom was like, maybe we'll do it. So I started working on this woman's private home garden, and that's where I really realized that I love growing. It was so peaceful, and I mean, I often worked alone, so that was a little bit hard being young and doing hard work, but I just remember being among the corn ones, like down below it, and I was like, this is so peaceful, this is so nice. And then my first real experience on a farm, I was a volunteer at a wood farm one summer after college, and that also showed me peaceful aspect of it, peaceful farms, care farm, and what interacting with nature and the ground and other people does for you. I did a few years at Mill River Farm, which is a production farm down in New Marlboro, and that was really hard work. It was a lot of hours, and I just realized kind of towards the end of it that I wanted a change of pace. So then I found at Green Nature that opening, but I started there, which has been very nice and definitely different than a production farm. Yeah, I like the smaller scale, and it always amazed me. I remember being on Mill River Farm where there was so much land and we were growing so much food. And then coming to communities where it's a small little spot. I mean, it is a different environment because it's nonprofit, and the area that we have is just different than other farms, but how much you can grow in such a small area. And I think that's very valuable for people to realize. I think some of the rewards that I feel from this work and farming is, well, specifically the Green Acres is teaching youth how to grow food. I think that's something that's really important is education, and especially starting when people are so young. I mean, I did also start, I guess I was maybe 14 years old when I started kind of farming. But I think that is really important, and it's something that a lot of people don't think about. I remember we had someone come last year when we were selling our sheep flock, and he was volunteering at a Liberty Farms, a livestock farm, and he was just on break from the Senate or the House of Representatives or something. So he'd never seen a farm. He was looking in there, and he's like, "Oh, what's that?" And you're like, "That's broccoli." Actually, I've never seen that grow. I didn't know how it grew. So it's just a very important aspect to farming in this area. One specific challenge that I can think of recently, and just this summer, I had new tasks of managing our youth crew, and it's hard to engage with the teams, especially post-COVID and with so much social media. They're worried about doing anything wrong, and I think that we make a great environment of being like, you can't make mistakes here. The point is to learn. The point is to gain something from it. Whether you do make a mistake, then you learn what is the right thing to do. So that was hard. Not the farming aspect for me was pretty easy, but it was the working with the teams and getting them engaged that was the most difficult part.
Fantastic, great. So we've already got quite a diversity of farming, which is great. We're going to keep having. So Elizabeth, can you tell us about Indian Line?
Sure, yes. So I'm Elizabeth King from Indian Line Farm. We're also just on the road for teenagers in South Egremont, and this is my 26th season growing. And some people know about Indian Line Farm. It has a history well before I was there, where Robin Benin and some other folks started essentially CSA. And there are anyway, I'll just leave that at there. I grow all vegetables, and we have a large CSA and then do the Great Barrington Farmers Market on Saturdays and then sell to widows and co-op, a few restaurants now. We how we sort of managed to make this work, and I'll include my husband Alex Thorpe in that. I'm the main farmer. I'm the one who makes all the day-to-day decisions generally. But one of the key points I think for me and our ability to be still here after 26 years has been to have a partnership with my husband and I, who both have very divergent skills and that marry well together. He's very mechanically oriented and can do one task until it's done and not get distracted by anything, where I'm much more, bigger vision focus, can think a number of steps in advance. And when I think about the idea of having to go into this alone, that would have been very difficult for me personally. And so I'll just say that was something that I think is key to us still being here after this amount of time. I think when I think back to all the years that we've been doing this, one of the incredible rewards has been just working with so many different people. And now that I am the age I am, I'm now can be the parents of some of the kids that I work with, and they're not kids really, but folks younger than me, and to sort of go through that stage of life, both personally, to have raised 2 kids on the farm, and then now be having almost those same ages of people working with me. I feel like it's kept me younger. It keeps me a little more in touch with what's happening beyond the boundaries of our farm. It's also led to probably the most personal growth in terms of really understanding what motivates people to do this incredibly hard work. And it's made me a more understanding person, and as Maeve also said, that as our young people have more and more distractions in their lives, it's also been a growing, a learning curve for me to feel how I can both address that but also let that reality be on our farm. I think there's so many rewards, but I know other folks are going to speak. But I think one of the challenges is also the very wonderfulness of having all these folks who work with me over the years. It's also just working with them. That challenge in and of itself is hard. I'm also finding increasingly the difficulty of being a single person and working here and living in this community is incredibly expensive. So being able to pay a wage that will also allow someone to live in the Berkshires is becoming increasingly impractical. So those are things that are constantly on my mind. The weather also just every year seems to be a little bit more and more unpredictable. And so it's making us really think about the ways in which our climate is changing and how we as farmers need to be able to think about all the risks that are involved and how to address those beforehand. I'll just say, I didn't really say quickly how I got into this, and I'll be brief. I was very much thinking I was focused on Latin America and Latin American history and politics, and spent 3 years living in Guatemala working with refugees. And in a very patronizing way of thinking, I thought that I would come back to the States, learn about sustainable agriculture, and then go back and teach horticulture to folks who mainly grow corn and beans, which is a staple for their diet. Started my apprenticeship and realized very quickly there was so much to learn, and how could I go and teach folks who have been subsistence farmers for much of, for generations, and then ended up on a farm where someone passed away, and we ended up getting that farm. I'm just gonna leave it.
I think these are great stories of how you each came to farm differently, and challenges are similar, but obviously life experiences are different. So great, thank you for sharing. Come around to you, Jen.
Sure. Hi everyone, my name is Jen Betty. I am
appreciate you seeing familiar faces and new faces. I'm gonna focus on all of you here. I am co-founder and executive director at Golden Roots Farm. We are a vegetable farm primarily, as well as culinary herbs, medicinal herbs, flowers, flowers. We are an education center, and we do at this point, we still do a little bit of wholesale, but most of our focus is on being a CSA, and that has changed over the years. Golden Roots Farm has been around since for 22 years I've been farming. And 19 of those years has been full time, with the sole income being generated off of the farm. It started as a very, very small farm. Quarter acre was the size of the farm, and it became viable to just be the only income that that my partner and I have. And so that was 19 years ago, and now we're at a place where there is a team of 10 of us at the peak of the season that is farming. We have just under 2 acres under cultivation, and we are land stewards for 10 acres of land, and we have technical ownership over just under 5 acres of that, long-term lease arrangements with neighbors. And so the just under 2 acres is all managed and really honored through indigenous ecologies, all hand scale, with a really strong focus on being in a place of reciprocity with the land. And I can say that the amount of food that we produce off of this land and what we are able to give to the community is only because of that deep relationship that we have with the land. We feed about 1,500 people a week on less than 2 acres under cultivation. And something that I'm really proud of is something that I love being able to share with others. And as our business has grown and changed over the years, the focus on education has become, it has been a thread all along, particularly with youth, and really centering not just agriculture as a pursuit, but what it means to be reconnecting and with land and our sense of place and self. And I've seen over the years just how much we as a culture have distanced ourselves from that relationship, and how much we're hurting because of that, and the choices that we make on a daily basis. There's a ripple effect that comes from our disassociation with land and ourselves as part of the earth, just as much as the earth is a part of us. And so that's something that actually led me into farming. I didn't necessarily have the words to say that when I was 19 years old and considering all of this, but I was listening. I was listening to something deep inside of me. I was listening to the whispers of my ancestors asking me to return, and I took that very seriously. And I didn't know necessarily how that would happen, but it's interesting to think back on, especially being in a college setting, because I was in college when all of this started to really transpire for me. I wasn't raised with any understanding. Someone was just, maybe we were speaking about not knowing what broccoli looked like. I had no idea what any vegetables came from the grocery store, most of them in cans. I had no concept of where food came from and why it mattered. And so starting to learn and understand how much this land that we occupy is built off of stolen land, stolen people, stolen labor. The whole formation of colonized agriculture is painful. And it is part of my responsibility as a farmer and a land steward to acknowledge that and to speak about that and to stand in the place in opposition of that. And so the farming practices that we keep, the relationships that we have with the community, the the relationships that we have with our farm team and the people who choose to be on our farm team are all very much intentional. And it has enabled us to grow our business in profoundly beautiful ways. And and in many ways, even though I've been doing this for 22 years, I feel like I'm just getting started, which is really exciting. And those first thoughts that I had of just was actually more around nutrition. I was studying nutrition in college, and I had personal experiences of a more holistic way of eating and really changing the way I felt inside. And so I said, well, if food is actually is a source of medicine, then I need to understand where food comes from. And so it was just a curiosity. It wasn't something that I was saying I wanted to get into farming. I wanted to, understand myself and take care of myself and build that relationship with the earth. And so somehow that unfolded. I ended up in college being able to shift my major around. I designed my own major to be able to really center agriculture and had beautiful internships that I got credit for when I was in school. It was amazing. And then when the opportunity came to actually move here to the Berkshires, there was, at that point, I had already had a few years of learning how to grow food to a certain extent. And I said, okay, well, I'll have this backyard garden and see what happens, because being able to grow food for myself felt more of a priority. And then we had more food than we needed. And so it just built a little farm stand. And it started to unfold that way. We started to learn more from our neighbors and meet people and start to see the levels of food insecurity that were already in place here that have only grown in the 20 years or so that I've been here. And so that farm stand became the beginning of community building. And from that, 10 years later, we decided to form a CSA. And that CSA has gone from being, like 30% of our farm income, with 70% of it being wholesale, to now being, I think this year will be over 80% of our farm income will be CSA. So direct food access is really important to us, and breaking the barriers through community relationships of food access has been, of primary importance to us. And was not that way at first. I thought I understood that. I thought I knew how to be able to get food in the hands of people without actually hearing from others and learning from others where those barriers were. So the community partnerships that we have, particularly with ThinkFOOD, which is a sibling farm up in present-day Cheshire, we have been able to establish a really comprehensive distribution system throughout the Berkshires, which helps to address those barriers of access. Our work is centered on also within the lens of language justice. So that work is Spanish first. Most of our population is Spanish speaking that we're working with on that level. We established an equitable sliding scale on the farm. So people that are picking up food at the farm are able to determine where they fit, both in wealth and income access. And so that has been able to expand more of our equitable access. And those are the pieces that I feel like I'm just getting going. We've been doing it for our CSA we've had for 12 years now. And so that piece feels very much close to my heart, and continues to grow and build in really beautiful ways.
Thank you. It's a really inspiring story. Thank you for sharing. And we have Ashley's another inspiring story. Do you want me to share this slide?
So,
Ashley's slide, so let me
Greetings, everyone. Hi.
Hi.
I'm Senator Ashley, related to Messiah itself. I am the daughter of Cynthia and Alan. I'm the granddaughter of John and Sarah, Virgie and Ezekiel. My family comes from St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I was born in Lenape land in Brooklyn, New York. I like to say I was conceived in the island of St. Vincent, also known as Mining, the land of the Arawak and the Carib people, the government of the nation. And I was born in Brooklyn, Lenape land, and I came to the Berkshires 3 years ago, and I co-founded Mumbek's Freedom Farm, inspired by this beautiful being, which is represented here in this statue, Elizabeth Mumbek Freeman, who utilized the law, utilized the policies, utilized the system in order to bring light to the injustices that we face in terms of our liberation in the land. And Jen, you so beautifully spoke to how those things are also embedded within our agricultural systems as well. And Mumbek's Freedom Farm is, I'm going to go to my slides, but it's a living laboratory for embodied liberation. And so I'm sure that each and every one of you have some concept of what it is to be free or what it means to be free in your head. But when you're walking down the street, how much of that are you thinking about when you're interacting with someone? How much of that are you thinking about when you're driving your car to the neighborhood or driving your car to your farm? How much about freedom do you think about when it's not related personally to you? I'm interested in creating spaces where we get to explore what it means to actually consider each other, and using the earth as our ultimate inspiration for that. So that's that. So Mumbek's Freedom Farm is a Black and brown queer femme-led cooperative farm and community sanctuary dedicated to embodied love, liberation, and connection. We understand that our collective thriving requires us to honor and be in relationship in a kind, reciprocal, and loving relationship with the earth, ourselves, and each other. As Jen so articulately stated, a lot of our primary wounds comes from our separation from the earth and our commodification of the earth. And agriculture is not an exception to that rule. Actually, agriculture has been used historically to continue to separate people from the land and to continue to perpetuate relationships of hierarchy that do not serve us, that do not serve the liberation of all beings. And land and access to land has been used to divide people historically and to keep people away from each other. So Mumbek's Freedom Farm is a place where we get to explore that. And so when people ask me what I grow, I say myself. We are cultivating consciousness. We're cultivating the actual ability to have an understanding of how our relationships impact the way that we live. And we can have a concept of it, you can read it in a book, but I was just saying to somebody, when you walk down the street, when you walk down in a certain neighborhood, what happens in your body? And how does that affect your ability to choose, to make a choice that might affect the life of somebody that you're passing by on the street, or the life of somebody that you're looking at on the screen? What are the ways that we can actually restore our connections to our own physical body, so we can restore our connections to the earth, so we can actually create the world that we say that we want to live in? So I came here 3 years ago with these beautiful people, Steph Wiley, Diara White Riley, and Savion. We founded this project because we were really invested in what does it look like to create an alternative to what it is that we see today? What it is, I was talking to this beautiful man, and he was saying, oh, you know, I was living in the city and everybody's got their own kitchen, their own refrigerator, their own thing, their own this and that. And I was also living in the city, the child of a Caribbean woman who I know my mom was bathing in the river, but here we are in Brooklyn with our own car, our own house, a washer and dryer that we shared with our community, but it was ours. And I saw everybody having their own. And then I lived not far from the projects where these housing developments were created, and there's like hundreds of units, which with everybody in their own little box. And I thought that there must be alternative. And Stephanie also thought the same. And so we came up here, and I'm not going to get into that story, I know it's a long story, and I can talk to you more about that story of how I arrived. But I thought that there must be a better way. As I said, my mom grew up in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and she moved to Brooklyn, and she had a backyard garden. So that's how I originally learned about like plants and things. She would give me bush tea, and she didn't tell me what the bush was. I didn't like the bush. She would do like shave like cocoa. We had a cocoa stick, and the cocoa, which is cacao now. Cacao is like superfood, like yay, cacao. But this is just a normal thing that we had in the house growing up. These are things that my mom brought, she shared with me, so I learned about medicine in that way, but also as a result of colonization and also the taking of our medicines from us and like taking of our medicine, we couldn't use our medicines, but then it was sold back to us. I didn't understand what I had until much later. I didn't understand what my mom was giving to me. And she didn't actually talk about that in the house in the Caribbean. She didn't want to talk about bathing in the river. There was shame around that. She didn't want to talk about what the bush was that she was giving me. It was like, don't speak about those things. You just do the thing, you don't talk about it. And so I kind of learned that way, that there are certain things that are powerful for us to use, that are important for us to have, but we don't talk about because maybe they're not going to be valued, or maybe we're going to be looked down upon because of the foods that we eat, the music that we listen to. But I thought it was a source of inspiration. Yeah, so this is a little bit of how I got here. My mom grew also things like Scotch bonnet peppers, okra, callaloo. And so she never taught me about growing, but I saw those things. I tasted a tomato that was grown by my mother's hands, and I miss my mother dearly. We are in this time of the Day of the Dead, this 4-day ritual of the Aztec and the Mayan people who were honoring our ancestors and giving a moment to connect with them. And so I'm just thinking a lot about what my ancestors have given me. So every time I come into a room and I have an opportunity to speak in front of people, I bring my relatives in with me because I know that I'm not alone. And I think that that's part of the relationship building and weaving. That not only am I bringing my parents in and they're my ancestors, but the earth, the air, the fire, and the water are also that as well for me. So Steph and De'Ara decided to leave last year. And so I've been in transition this year, and it's been really hard. And in terms of like making it work, I just want to acknowledge Elizabeth and Jen for really supporting me this year. And I know that maybe you didn't think that it impacted me. It was so, our time together was limited because you're giving so much, but it really helped me. And that's part of making it work, is helping each other. And I'm just so grateful for that. So that's been a part of this transition is like, how do I, as a single Black, queer, femme woman coming here and creating this sanctuary for folks? And how do I also leave space in talking about grief to grieve what has been lost and moving forward? So I've been working with these two beautiful beings here. I'm also Maeve and Sarah from Greenacres, Dan and Ben, just everyone in this community who has supported me. I'm really grateful. I've also worked with CDI, Lex and Annalise, Gabby Herrera from NEFOC, and a team of folks that have just really gathered around me to support me in this time. So the key things for me, you know, as I'm going forward in this exploration of sanctuaries, liberation and joy, connection and wellness that welcomes our full selves. We are not like these walking heads around, we're full embodied beings, and I'm interested, especially for BIPOC folks, in figuring out ways that we can safely be in our bodies on the land with one another. So I've gone through this sort of, I guess I call it a radical restructuring process that I've been in for this year. Just kind of exploring, well, what does sanctuary look like? How do I build a team? Who's really committed, who's willing to do the work, having a lot of space for question, feedback, and working together. Our guiding light is Elizabeth Montbet Freeman, our vision is sanctuary. And I have a quote here by Betty Lou Gamer, talking about freedom. When I liberate myself, I liberate others. And I just want to really, really just speak to that. There's so many things that are happening in the world right now. And I think, again, for me, it all comes back to the microcosm. How are we treating our land? How are we treating our own bodies? How do we find freedom and peace within ourselves? You know, it can be maybe sometimes it might be easier to go away from home and advocate, but what about the people right here in the community? What about the kids right here? What about the people right here? What about the families right here? What about those people in the corners that I didn't even know there was like a housing development over there until I went and I delivered food over there? What about those people? What about the children here? The kids that are studying at Summers Rock? My liberation is tied up with their liberation. So I can say a lot of things, but I think I will just say that much. Like, I think it's been really beneficial for me to have the support of these amazing beings here. I think that, you know, cultivating consciousness and raising awareness through our reconnection to the land is vital and important. The land is speaking. You know, I think in terms of what Elizabeth was saying, in terms of the barrier, the climate is huge. I also think that it's an opportunity for us to really lean in and listen, and not just to go about like business as usual, but to really come together and strategize. What does freedom from for the land look like? Because again, the liberation of the land is not separate from my liberation. How do we have rights for these waterways? You know, because that's the water that we're feeding our plants with. How do we protect the air and the air rights here? Because that's the air that our children are breathing. Those are the things that I'm thinking about when I'm thinking about liberation, and I'm thinking about ways that we can learn from each other and learn from the land how to create systems that actually are life generating and sustaining. So I'll say that much.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, now you can spread out. You don't know what it's like to spread out. You can spread out. So we have a lot of beautiful, amazing people. Big fans of all of these people up here. We'd love to have them share more of what they do with you. So please ask a question or make a comment. Learn more about them, what they do.
Well, funny.
Yeah.
Seems like a common theme is community. What do you all feel like is, I guess, your favorite aspect of your farm's interaction with your community, and what's the more of a service for the community? And it doesn't have to just be one aspect.
Already a question for our Zoom people. Community, what's your favorite aspect of working with your community? How do you connect with it, with the community, and what does that mean to you?
I'll say something. I mean, Jen talked about her CSA, and I would say that for us, that aspect of our farming, the 250 families who come every week, and the children that are being raised, picking flowers and cherry tomatoes and green beans on our farm, and the impact that we are able to, I would say actually, the opportunity that we're able to provide to folks of all ages come to our farm and have this amazing connection, which we've also talked about, to a space. And I hear that over and over again, how lovely that is for people to have that experience year after year. And I feel like I get to know people in a very different way when they are very connected to that, the physical space of our land. We've also been able to participate in a number of food access programs over the number of years, where there's more and more funds, both state and private. And because of the generosity of some of my own members, that we've been able to be more generous to the community. And that has been an amazing experience for us to also get to know and meet people who, for a long time, that felt like a personal barrier, like how to maintain a viable farm, but also be able to provide food to people of all income levels, all different kinds of humans. And so I really appreciate being able to reach out in the community.
Yeah, I will also just say, I didn't talk about it, like, I totally agree that when I mentioned like delivering food. So Bridge, they do like a packing thing and I got to deliver some food to different families and that was super helpful to see like who's getting this food. I also distribute food through Berkshire Road and also through Multicultural Bridge, so that gets to different families within South County region. And I think like you were talking about events and just having like opportunities for people to come and just be with the farm, to be with animals, to learn different ways of interacting has been so great. We had a couple community conversations this year on the farm where we were talking about race farm privilege, but in a different way, just kind of like sitting in a circle and introducing and getting to know one another and starting to understand, well, what is community? And I heard that mentioned here a few times today, but like, who gets to define community? And what about communities that have existed for a really long time? You know, there's been farms here that 100 years, however many years, but there are new people coming into this community all the time. Like, how does a community just stay the same? Or what happens? How does community evolve? How do we help? How do we co-shape that and co-create a community? Because it's always changing.
That thought makes me think about how I imagine that Chisholm as a grown up here and having, I think of the first community that I felt like I was a part of was like coming home to start a dairy with like the people in the dairy community around it were really excited that I was going to be taking over again farm. But I feel a lot like a sort of bridge person because I, you know, like because of who I am and how I was brought up, I like, do relate to those people, but also like the kind of person I turned out to be, or you know, have chosen to be, makes the space that I created more welcoming to different kinds of people and some of the like, newer folks to our area. And when you hear you talk about your CFP numbers, like, you know, people I see every week, or many times a week at the farm store, at the farm itself, are often folks that, you know, the farm is really, you know, they're like real relationships. And we know a lot about each other about, I don't know, you just get to like, there's a lot of give and take in those kind of relationships and stuff like that. But where we also have these events and Chisholm is we're run and we really prioritize that and you know how we speak about our identity and how we like create the space there. So I feel like that has become one of the things I really enjoy is being like a rural queer space that you know, people can come to and kind of like a weird thing to be on a dairy farm. Like it happens. I don't know, queer identity at the same time. And then I think for lots of people, it's like a sort of it's like we're coming home. Dairy was like ubiquitous once upon a time and it's shrinking away, but because of that past, so many of our queer families, like they have some history with dairy farming, and if not, they're just like they want to be rural and they're learning about being rural, and it's just a different thing in a rural place. Yeah, so that's
Yeah, I think I already said it when I was starting earlier, the needs about educating the youth in this area. Because like one presentation earlier today was talking about how most of the farmers and the firsters are 65 years and older, and there's no one coming behind them, then what is going to happen to the farms here or the agriculture here. And then I think at Green Agency recently been having a lot of conversations surrounding ag and vocational programs in schools, and they're just not there in Berkshire, or they're just starting up or they're small. So I think by being a place where young people can come and learn about these skills and these processes is really important. And I really, even though it's difficult, I really appreciate it.
Challenge.
Yeah. Yeah, there's much to echo what you're saying, and I think, yeah, in addition to the CSA, community for Woven Roots is varied in that, we have folks that come to the farm, and then we also have, a comprehensive distribution system, and we were able to expand that out even further this year, actually tremendously further, thanks to, funding from the state. And so, and that is actually continuing to expand in ways that I could have only dreamt of, and so it's been really amazing to see what, a core group of people within an equitable sliding scale have been able to maintain like a certain ratio within the community, and then seeing other collaborations, both on state and, organizational levels occur that have really brought not just awareness, but actually real access. One of the components that I often find within funding is that it's very specific towards the food, towards it itself, and so a lot of the work that I do with the community partners we have, particularly with ThinkFOOD, is that we're always looking for and creating spaces for gatherings and for knowledge shares, and I say knowledge shares and to really honor that we all have something to offer. We all have gifts to offer, and so many people that have been displaced. And myself included, have also, not necessarily had the ability to be able to, you were speaking to just the quietness around and fear around really being able to bring traditions and knowledge and experiences out, front and center again. And so a lot of the work that we do in that community building is to help to cultivate those spaces that feel safe, that feel welcoming, that feel empowering. And so that's like an extension of the CSA that we have, and it's something that I feel incredibly nourished by and really responsible to uphold. Or not just me by myself, but to be continuing to build those relationships to uphold those spaces, and being in partnership is a very key element, or it's like it's just an essential tool that we all have and need to be remembered more.
Yeah, look at it, creating safe spaces, because you're each doing that intentionally. And the earth is the way to do it, the land is the way to do it. So, I mean, it's incredibly generous, the work you're doing, and incredibly hard, but I'm really glad that you're doing it. All right, other questions, other comments? Yes.
Hi, so I love farmers. For so many different reasons, and one of them is that I think that farmers are the most incredible problem solvers. That you all are on the ground literally every day feeling and relating to so much all the time, whether it is climate or weather or people or the land. The multitude of forces are the things that you're constantly holding in these profoundly beautiful ways. So thank you for all that you do in holding those things. And I appreciate the rural queerness, the joy, the connection to land. And so I'm curious, given that like so many people in this room represent organizations, states, allies of resources, and Ashanti, you brought in this like element of joy in here. And so as some of the most incredible problem solvers, I'm curious to hear about what you dream about, your vision, what you want to see happen, and given all of the types of different people in this room, like what you would tell us in terms of like the supports that you need for some of those dreams. You know, Jen, you said a little bit about funding of like, or about spaces, or about what it is, but like how the question is something about like joy and dreams and resources about those.
Yeah, what do you need to keep your dreams going and bring joy? How can we help you?
And I mean, yeah, I mean, I could say like the normal things, like, I need a team, I need like, resources for team building and space and funding to fix things up and like, but I also like what I really need. Yeah, I just really feel like I need organizations to like understand their role in perpetuating certain systems. Like, because it's like I can do all the things, I can come here and talk, but like if the organizations that I'm working with still don't really understand, like really get how maybe there's something that they might be perpetuating that is contributing to the state that makes it still possible for farmers to be on a year-to-year lease, or just not being able to distribute food to people that they want to distribute to, the barriers between us even being able to gather as farmers, because we don't have time because we're doing so many things. Like I would say, like I could say, like, yeah, there's so many things I could say about. Of course, we always need funding for something. I could say always need funding for something. But what I really dream of is like radically new and different ways of us imagining how we can be. Radically imagining new different ways that these organizations can exist. Can we like sit in circles instead of sitting at a desk? Can we get back to more like earthy, rooted ways of actually finding these solutions? Like you said, why are we some of the most creative, innovative solution people? Because we're there. We're with the earth, we're with the elements, we're listening. We're constantly on the lookout, we're observing, we're curious. We act like we don't know everything. I don't know everything. Jen just said 22 years and it's still like, I'm just beginning. And that sort of like mentality of like, we don't know sometimes, and that's okay. Like I could say a lot of things, but honestly, I really also don't know. Sometimes I'm like, okay, maybe I could use it for like this building, but is that really going to serve what I'm trying to do? I don't know. Even if I get that funding and I put it there, I don't know how that's going to impact. It might take 10, 15 years for me to actually see the impact of the funding that I get this year. So that's what I would say.
Well, I wanted to shout out to organizations and people in this room, also to Commissioner Randall for the state's dedication to the farmers in Massachusetts. Like, I think Massachusetts is one of the most amazing states who's committed to the huge range of agriculture that's here. And to the private and the public funds that are available, it just always blows my mind. And I benefited from it and I'm so appreciative of it. And it makes me just want to dig always deeper to being generous, both to my fellow farmers, to my community, to folks who are in need. So just a big shout out to really a number of people here in this room. Especially, after COVID, there was just an amazing amount of funds and I just felt like this state cares about us. I mean, sometimes it's so solitary, the work that we do. And so again, just thank you. I also, something you said about the getting together for farmers, I think we are often working alone, with our small teams, and some people really work alone. And so something I've been doing, and that is increasingly wanting to make a priority of getting farmers together. We used to have ranges, we used to have other sort of more agriculturally farmer focused groups. And so, I'll just shout out to Bath and Berkshire Growing, who were very generous for making a big farmer dinner happen last night to make it affordable for everyone to come. And I feel like that's so well spent. And so those kind of things where, we can come together as people who sometimes I feel like a different breed of person who want to do the work that we do, to continue to help us come together, problem solve together, is super important. And I feel that. So it's not like you asked the question, what can we do and continue to dream? And I feel like we're doing it. And it's with the community that's here and the people that are also sitting up there.
Yeah, one of the things I think what else I would like to say, and that makes me, I also sometimes feel like a different breed of human or something in the area world, and I think about fairs as like a place where farmers used to get together and hang out, and fairs are so they're like all up in the way now or whatever. And I keep having this dream that I would have a fair actually. Oh, yeah. Maybe like that happen. But one of the things that I really appreciate a lot that you mentioned earlier as well is the food access funding that has become available for farmers to participate in that type of getting the moving food in our region. It was something that always felt really hard to do without having the funding, or like something that I like it sort of like hurt because I wasn't able to do it in the way that I wanted to. And I feel like it is both this it's both getting good food grown in our special place to people in need, but it's also like a staff for farmers who care about their communities and are so often, I don't know, it's just sort of like the economy here is a strange one, and we're so often going to with private naturalists. So increasing with that type of funding is feels really exciting to me. Also, my partner works in food access, and so I hear about it from her side as well. And yeah, there's so much room there to grow that. Lee, what's your dream? All right. I don't know if I got a little bit. Is let's see. There's as I was saying, there being in a place where I'm just getting started, there are a number of pieces within Women's Farm that have been coming together over the last few years because of some of the folks in this room, and as well as the state and community members really making commitment to build infrastructure to be able to do so much more. And with an infrastructure that is 3/4 of the way complete, we this year have already been able to accomplish, for lack of a better word, more what I was projecting to be like in 5 years. And so, I'm in this dream space now going, oh my God, wow, this is incredible. There's so much room. And I think, I keep coming back to, it's only been in the last few years that grants have really been in my life. And there are incredible grants that are being offered, more so than I've ever seen before. There's a couple of pieces to it that I've seen, like in the sense of being over 2 decades into farming, that it took me a really long time to even start to know about the grants itself, and that felt like, and continues to feel like there's an incredible amount of gatekeeping around those grants. And once people are in, then all of a sudden there's all these doors that open up. Like the getting in, there have been tremendous improvements that have occurred
And we still have a lot further to go with that. And I mean, I can say, I can think back to, you know, like 15 years or 20 years ago, and, you know, and I would see specifically like white cis men getting grants. And then like grant after grant after grant after grant, and I would be like, I don't understand how this is happening, you know, and I actually remember being in conversation with one of them who's in this room right now, and I won't put you out in this way that was so beautiful though, like it was just like, how, I don't understand, like, how is this working? Like, how does this happen, you know? And then seeing what happened when I did get that engaged. And so like those, that's something that I'm really curious about and also want to, be able to help advocate more for. The other piece that I'm thinking a lot about is just like getting funding for relationship building, like what you were saying for the farmers gathering, for example, like there still was a cost to that. It would absolutely diminish, but there was a cost to that. And there's like such value in having that time together and creating like multiple times for that to occur so that it can be accessible to, you know, more people at different times of the year. And like that, just having funding for relationship building without any like specific outcome other than the relationship itself, which may become something more or not, because we don't know, but like limiting ourselves into these boxes of like deliverables is painful, really painful, and not always something that we know, you know, and sometimes like funding comes in and it's, you know, like the following year, and then we have a different like climate crisis that we're dealing with, whatever, you know, whatever it is. And so what I'm like imagining right now could be really different, and will be, not even could, it will be really different 6 months from now, a year from now, 3 years from now. So leaving space for that, I think is really important.
Yeah, I'm hearing a lot of support for that for community all day long, and I think it's a really good suggestion. And I want to come back to something you said, Ashley, about the gatekeeping. This is what you were reflecting, Ashley, that we need to recognize people in this room who are part of organizations need to recognize there's still perpetuating problems to that sort of access, that direct access. And it's hard to get in. Once you're in, maybe it's a little easier, but getting in or even knowing that the access is there. So I want to recognize that. So great question. Thank you. Other questions or comments? Go ahead.
Elizabeth mentioned that it's difficult, maybe a living wage for workers. I'm pretty good to brainstorm on things that might help with that problem. You know, that means you can yell out crazy things.
How do we get to a living wage? We're asking you to problem solve. You already do all the problem solving. What's that solution? There, you have
Well, I was just gonna say, I feel like I think that is a great question, but I often hear, being in the farm community, that the ideas of like pay, access, housing, climate, like farmers, what do you need, how are you gonna do it? And I think it's actually on the community that is not actively farming to figure that out and work on it, because farmers have like such little time, not that other people don't, but there's yeah, just a lot already on farmers in these times. But mostly I just wanted to say of being in like many farming conferences or panels through the last, I don't know, 17, 18 years or whatever, it's really I really appreciate just who I'm looking at right now. It is, I do so to get grants, Jen. I have seen so many farmer panels of white men for many years, but to see that start to shift and to hear perspectives that start to shift what we're learning is really valuable. And, you know, working the last 3 years pretty exclusively with young people. I know young people have been to all of your farms in different capacities. I know farms, like young people up here who made it to cheese home events, I've known cheese for a long time, not connected to me, they found their way to that community. And there's work you're all doing that I don't think you get, maybe even know sometimes like how valuable it is, like how people are finding a these to your farm and are so deeply impacted by it. And so it is really more that any of you are doing. But I do hope you know you are deeply appreciated by people in the community that
That probably just come through your farm and mom and later and reach back up to it. But I agree. I remember our trip to your farm having to do that, like, as like a stand for that purpose, like when you're standing on when you go that on your
Yeah, thank you, sir, for recognizing this element of this panel, which was sort of on purpose and sort of, these are just amazing farmers. And I want to do what But let's go back to the dream. What's the dream for pay, for living wage? Yeah. We don't ask you to solve the problem, what would be the dream then?
I'd love to pay all my employees $25 an hour, right?
Well, good.
I mean, I think it's a complex question. I mean, I just can't, my brain just, I cannot separate the things, like what, okay, if they get paid $25 an hour, what is their rent costing in this region? Can they really afford to pay their rent? Like, is that, but I think that I want to pay my host how much too, and sometimes, you know, there are ways that I can afford to do that for a short amount of time, but like, those people don't live here. I have like virtual support that I can maybe pay a little bit because they live in other places where it's more affordable. What about people who live here? Can they actually afford? What would their life look like if they did do that? How many hours? You know, so again, I think about like, yeah, I would throw the question back to you all.
You guys think about what the workers need. Is there a housing system that's not there now? That you can kind of imagine what maybe really.
I think the number out there for someone to be able to live and pay the rents that are more like that are on average is that someone needs to be making $45,000 at a minimum in order to live in this community and pay whatever that rent would turn out to be a third of their overall yearly income. And so that's not super possible. Many of us aren't running year-round farms, so I'm not. So that's already something. I mean, I'm running a year-round farm, but I don't need a full crew of 8 for the whole year. So for me, one of the focuses that we as a community, not only just for farm workers and folks who want to work on farms, but is for all like our restaurant workers and our, younger, the population who needs to live here. How can we create incentives for people who own homes to rent to local employees? So that is something I think we discussed a lot in the Egremont Housing Committee. But what are the creative solutions that like Aspen and Vail, who have even housing prices that are worse than ours? What are they doing for the housing? Because I think that's a key element.
Jamie, you want to jump in?
Well, I'm just going to allude to our panel this morning. Again, it's just a few of the tools in the toolbox, and none of us on that panel were affordable housing advocates per se, but we can talk about the community land trust model and your farm lives and the conservation land trusts who are getting more into employing more tools that can, address the farmland on the housing, address affordability of the whole farm. So it's, come a long way, I think, but, just thinking of the land trust community is evolving, I think, and really listening and hearing and thinking about how it can kind of lean into its growing edge in terms of maybe historically just protecting open space or wild spaces, now getting into protecting working farms, and then really pushing the envelope to think about not excluding the house, but actually including the house, and really thinking about the farmer and the housing as part of a whole farm, what we call whole farm affordability. So I will say there is a whole network of, land trusts and folks out there who are really thinking about this and really trying to think about the intersection of conservation and affordable housing. In fact, the Massachusetts Land Trust Conference this past year in March, the whole theme of it was around affordable housing and conservation, how they can work better together. So there are folks thinking about this. There's no one solution, but I think there are some pretty cool creative examples happening right here in the Berkshires.
Thank you. Go ahead.
You were back at it. Hearing the words Vail and Aspen make my blood crawl. Skin crawl and blood boil. Which inspired me to just raise my hand because I think we are on such a slippery slope towards, looking more and more like those places. And, I have no interest in being there. And I think that sliding down that slope will go quickly, if we don't have a radical realignment of capital and housing and zoning. And something, things that are beyond amazing efforts that are happening by a lot of organizations in this room that have tended towards incremental, but looking at how we can, house people and the job, people want to live here, the jobs are here, our student bodies are shrinking because families can't afford to live here. If we can't harness the levers of federal, state, and philanthropy and municipalities to channel the stuff that makes it happen, the money into some creative housing solutions that have dignity to them, we're not gonna be in a good place.
Back to you all.
Well, just to build off of that, I think it kind of comes back to what we were talking about this morning in terms of partnerships, right? So there are these different tools, there are people with resources, there are models, and I think it just is like getting in rooms like this and hearing from the farmers and the farm workers and what they need and like what's missing and how we can align a lot of these different tools and different funding sources. We are so often so siloed in our little individual boxes of what we do, and there may be some creative and collaborative funding that many of our organizations may not realize about, like just saying like the conservation space and the affordable housing. They have similar tools, but they don't often talk, and they have totally different streams of funding and legal structures and all of that. So it's like the more we can kind of come together and talk and strategize, I think we can come up with some more really interesting, creative, holistic solutions, but we need more stuff like this more often.
We had a tour for the commissioner in July and we visited a farm in North County, Bigfoot Farm, where Brian Cole basically works by himself on land that he rents. And he made a really good point that it's hard to attract farmers if they don't have their own land because and Molly is the poster child for this. Your equity is what you put into the soil. And if that is taken away from you, you have no business, you have nothing. And so the question becomes for the state or government, are there other ways that you can help create programs that are enticing to farmers? We've been creating, simple IRA funds, something that can be matched by the state so farmers can build some related wealth to the work that they're doing. I think there are creative ways around that to attract young and new farmers beyond just people who are looking to have land of their own.
Great idea. Thanks, Lee, for the question. So we just have a minute left, and I want to thank all of everyone for being here. Or if you want to take a short break before our keynote address starts with Commissioner Hanlon's here. We got here at 3:30.